Everybody says that.
It's literally the plugin that it's leveled playing field. Everybody uses the Pro Q3.
Yeah, my life changed when I got Pro Q3, hands down.
Same here. Yeah, same here.
But, man, such a tough question. I think I am still a huge sucker for SSL channels. I think that's just because I learned how to mix on SSL. So like those EQs were like the first EQs that I really learned inside and out. So yeah, I'm going to say the Brainworks SSL 4000E is the one plugin that I use probably more than any other plugin. Yeah,
great.
That's the Desert Island because it does everything. It's got filters, it's got an EQ, it's got a compressor, it's got a gate. You know, I think that's the one that if I had to use only one plugin, it would be that.
Sick. What do you do for mastering?
Good question. Really great question. It's been a trend lately. So it's funny because I feel like that decision I'm finding more and more is getting made in the production stage. And sometimes I'll get a reference that's already so loud and so dialed to where it needs to be that like after I manage to squeeze in my 10 to 15%, it's like good luck to finalizing it, you know, like sometimes mastering something that's already so loud and so like dialed is such a task. But I definitely send a reference. Like I definitely have my mix and then send a reference that has the final stage, the final gain staging kind of laid in with like the limiters and all those final EQing moves in there. So yeah, and that's what I send to the clients and producers is like the reference. But I have a variety of final engineers that I use depending on the budget, depending on what's going on. Sometimes if there's grants, they need to be Canadian or whatever. So, and I try and like, you know, use different people just to get a sense for who's out there and who does good work. I have a great relationship with Connor Salmora at Salmora Studios. He masters a lot of the stuff that I do. You know, there are a lot of other great American engineers that I've used that have delivered great results as well. So yeah, it's really project based. You know, some producers that I work with, we have a relationship with mastering engineers as well, where it's like, okay, we'll go to this person because we like their work. And, you know, some producers like to try other people and just see what we can get the best results from. And that's sometimes a bit of a gamble, but it's been interesting.
Yeah. I was just curious, like, I guess, yeah, if like how much the producer has to say, how much you have a say.
Yeah.
I'll just talk about that a little bit more.
Sure. I'd love to talk about that more. So yeah, if I get a reference that's already dialed in nice and loud, I don't really have a say as to how loud it has to be. I've obviously got to meet that benchmark. And sometimes that can be unfortunate because I feel like this kind of ties into the loudness war conversation where, you know, if things are loud, they're better. You know, people just feel better when things are loud because things sound better louder, I guess. But in my ideal world, I love to leave room. You know, I love to leave a little bit of room in my reference so that when it does get finalized, the benefits are, you know, positive. And I just hate doing mastering revisions. I hate having to take the finalized track and, oh, it's good, but we're just missing this little element now that's getting lost because of the volume. Like when you get to such a high volume at LUFS, it's like any little detail makes a big difference. And it doesn't necessarily make it better or worse. It's just different. And, you know, we get so drawn to how things sound. And so like we hold it so dear once we identify, okay, my song sounds like this, that it's so hard to kind of step out from that. So yeah, sometimes I'll end up finalizing it just because like anything that happens after the fact just isn't the same. And you know, the artist and the producer love where it's sitting. So we'll roll like that. But I love to leave a little bit of room. Like for example, that song a year ago today, the production reference wasn't slammed. So there was room for me to make it a little bit louder, a little bit better for sure. And then when it went to be finalized, there was room for it to grow there too. And, you know, Connor mastered that song, took it to the next level and it sounded great and everyone was happy, you know, and it was a seamless experience. But when a track comes in already so hot, we're going to mastering revisions, let me tell you. So that
really,
I find some of the times it's just harder to nail it. And like I said, it's not whether it's better or worse, it's just different. And when things get too different, sometimes it's like, that's just not the vibe we're going for. So PSA to producers, you don't have to make it overly loud. Leave some room for your friends who are going to be working on this after you do. Please and thank you.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen to that. Awesome, dude. So I guess I got one more question for you.
Sure.
I'm sure that a lot of people listening are kind of at the beginning of their journeys. Like, what's one thing that you wish you had known at the beginning of your journey and you learned, or one thing that you realized later in life that you did right at the beginning of your journey that you'd want to share with them?
Good question. I think this kind of ties back into just like being a person. When I was younger, I just used to think highly of myself. I used to think that I was great. I used to think that I had the answers because I wanted to have the answers. And I think such a big part of my job is to constantly humble yourself and constantly open yourself to the universe so you can learn. You know, I feel like there's a huge part of my life where I was thinking I had the answers, and I developed my methods and had so much pride in developing the methods that I did that I would use them because I developed them. And that kind of pinholed me in a way, because then I was just like creating more problems for myself. And as soon as I kind of dropped that, where it was like, okay, I just constantly remind myself that I have no idea what I'm doing sometimes. And it's okay to not know what you're doing, because when you have this expectation for yourself, I find it actually just like harms your process more than it benefits your process. Because to be honest, even the best engineers and mixing engineers and, you know, finalizing engineers, like, constantly need to adapt to the industry, because music is constantly adapting. Music is constantly changing. So if you keep an open approach to your work, it's going to be easier for you to accept the changes, and it's going to be easier for you to do a better job and do justice to the material that you're working on if you're open to it. But if you go into it with the mentality of like, oh, I know it has to be done, I know what I'm doing, you know, I've got the answers before you even start, sometimes you might just be, you know, pushing yourself into a corner. So I wish that I opened myself up earlier, because I kind of just like, you know, ego's a terrible thing. And I definitely had a bit of an ego going on when I was younger, you know, being a young kid engineering, being like the head engineer of a studio.
Young whippersnapper.
Yeah, exactly. You know, had an edge to me, you know, I just felt good about what I was doing, and I felt like I was on the right path. So I kind of just like built up some energy, that, not to say that I was a completely egotistical freak, but I definitely was a little hard-headed and definitely thought that like, oh yeah, I know what I'm doing. You know what I mean? And I wish I just kind of like opened myself up earlier, because there's not one way to do everything. You know, there are so many different ways to do things. And when you open yourself up to those processes and those methods, it's easier to determine what you like and what you don't like and what works for you. And I feel like at least my craft and part of my job is, you know, developing a method that works for you and then adapting it and continuously developing it, as opposed to just being like, okay, this has worked for me, this is what I'm doing from now on. You know, that doesn't really work. So yeah, if I could tell Chris from 5 years ago any advice, or 10 years ago even any advice, I would say just like, don't be afraid to make mistakes, and you know, like, keep an open mind, because it'll help you out.
Well, just you saying that just shows that you're wise beyond your years, and you're clearly you've clearly realized that at an age much younger than a lot of other people. So yeah, congrats on that.
Sweet. Thank you.
For for sure.
Oh,
Dude, this has been a really fun interview, and I feel like I've personally related to a lot of the things that you've said. So thank you for sharing your wisdom and your experiences with the audience.
Oh man, thank you.
How can we find you on the internet?
You can find me on Instagram. I don't have a website just yet. Still working away at that. My Instagram handle is theg.is.silent. That's a little throw.
The G is silent.
The G is silent. That's a little throw to my last name because the G is in fact silent. But yeah, that's where you can find me. You can reach out to me out there through DMs if anybody wants to talk more about, music, life, anything like that. Always down to chop it up.
Amazing. Chris, thank you so much for your time. I hope you stay safe out there and have a great day.
Ben, it was great to meet you, man. Thanks so much for having me.
Cheers. Absolutely. Take care.
You too.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Secret Sonics. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Chris as much as I did. If you enjoyed this episode or any of our other episodes, I'd super appreciate it if you would go to Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and review. It really helps the show. And if you could share this episode or your favorite episode with a friend or two, that would also really help the show move forward. In addition to that, you can find us on social media. Just search for Secret Sonics. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. And you can email me at secretsonics@gmail.com if you have any comments, feedback, guests you might want to recommend, anything like that. So that's about it for now. Until next time, I hope you guys have a great week. Stay safe out there and dig in. Bye-bye.